This award recognises excellence and innovation in records management within the Victorian public sector. This team is virtually unchanged, won this award 4 years ago. The awards are only held every 2 years, and the latest success of the team is to the credit of them staying intact and adapting the changing world of records and data management. Congratulations to the Corporate Information Team. Parks and Leisure Australia. Council won the award for the best playground under $500,000 for the BP Ronald Reserve Playground. Of particular note is the extensive community involvement in the decision-making around the components of the new playground. Now in the running for the National Award for this category, which will be announced in October this year. The Together We Can stop and prevent family and bring an end to family violence. Cardinia Shire Council submitted a nomination for the National Local Government Innovation Award late March 2008. The awards were decided through an inclusive process by all attendees at the 2018 National Local Governments Innovation Conference. Cardinia Shire Council was awarded the gold medal for innovation for our innovation project, Together We Can. Mr. Evans, I believe we have no apologies. Is that correct? That's correct, Mr. Mayor. No problem. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes for the meeting as listed? Councillor Jodie Owen. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carol Ryan. All those in favour? Declared carried. Declarations of interest. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest? If not, before moving to the agenda items, we are going to bring community question time forward this evening because we've got many people who have come along to hear their questions answered, and because tonight's going to be a relatively long meeting rather than people having to wait around for a couple of hours, which they're most welcome to do if they'd like to do that. Otherwise, we'll have their questions answered right up front. So at this council meeting, I think it needs to be noted too, community question time as we're webcasting our council meeting this time. At this meeting, we won't have any supplementary questions to be asked. We will have the questions that people have submitted answered, and they will get those answers in writing as well. And what we're going to do in future with our live streaming, we'll have to decide after getting a report back to the councillors about where we go after this. It was a trial that we did for 3 meetings, and this will be our 3rd and final meeting before we make a decision on the way that we go forward with the process. There are legal implications with people making open statements at council meetings. They might name community members, they might name councillors, and we don't want to edit our recordings because if we do that, it makes it look like we're being biased towards someone or not to somebody else. So we will decide where we go with that. So anyway, we will move forward with a question. We've received a question from Joe Spencer. Is Joe in the gallery? Thank you, Joe. I refer the question to our CEO, Mr. Gary McQuillan. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The question is, from 1998, the Curriup Motorcycle Club lobbied council over a 10-year period for land use to use as a community motorsport facility. In 2008, council granted the use of land at 335 McGregor Road to the Curriup Motorcycle Club, and have continued to lobby council to make McGregor Road a permanent home. Council, can you please advise what is the blocker that prevents us from being granted a permanent home at McGregor Road? Thank you for the question, Ms. Spencer. I refer to my letter last year of the 16th of August 2017, where I then advised the Secretary, Brenda Corkery, that the club could continue to occupy the land under the current arrangements, and those arrangements were since 2010, that they can continue to occupy the land which they have occupied since 2010. As I've also advised the club that we have been in discussions with the Department of Planning to rezone an alternative site for the club. We are continuing to have discussions with the Department of Planning regarding that, and that's still an option. In respect of 335 McGregor Road, I'd like to reassure the club that they can continue to occupy that land in respect of the power easement as per their conditions of 2010. And we're also looking at potentially how a permanent home can be also constructed on that site, and we'll know that later in the year.
And you'll receive that in writing too, so even if you couldn't hear, we will definitely give that to you in writing. No worries. Thank you. We've received a series of questions from Gloria O'Connor. I see Gloria in the gallery. I refer the question to Jenny Cicluna, General Manager for Community Wellbeing. Thank you, Ms. Cicluna.
Mrs O'Connor, your first question was regarding the former sports pavilion and football venue on the PB Ronald Reserve. Why is it to be removed instead of being restored as an historic and useful venue for community recreational use? Thank you for your question. The master plan for PB Ronald Reserve is soon to be revised, but the original master plan included demolition of the building affectionately known as the Lion's Den to create more much-needed open space in the Pakenham area. The reserve purpose has changed over time to be more focused on passive recreation rather than structured sports activities. The building comprises of two main sections, the first being a change room facility at one end of the building. This area has been utilised by the Cardinia Performing Arts Company as a rehearsal and storage space for many years. Council has recently been able to secure alternative premises for the Performing Arts Company as the old change rooms are beyond servicing the needs of the group and are in quite a dilapidated state. For this reason, the old change room section of the building will be demolished later this year. The second half of the building is the previous club rooms, which have been more recently used by the Pakenham Racing Club as a gaming facility and bistro. You would be aware that once the Officer Club was opened, the Racing Club vacated the building. Council has received a proposal from a locally based alternative education institution who wishes to be relocated to this building to increase the numbers of young people that it services. These young people are at risk of being disengaged from education. This educational institution will contribute half the costs of renovating the building, and Council's draft budget has proposed to meet the other half of the costs. It's anticipated that the renovated building will be functioning as a school by the middle of next year.
I refer the next question to Mr. Andrew Paxton, the General Manager for Planning and Development. Thank you, Mr. Paxton.
Ms O'Connor, thank you very much for your question. I'll just read the question out for everyone to start off with. Are you able to advise regarding the preparation of the government-initiated Pakenham East Precinct Structure Plan and consequent CSC Amendment C234, the approximate amount of council revenue that has had to be spent since 2016 for the ongoing consultant studies and reports currently in preparation for the Victorian Planning Authority panel hearing in June? Is this a major development project resulting from government logical inclusions process in 2012? Ms O'Connor, there are agreements in place with all the property owners to reimburse the cost of all those background studies that will form the basis of the plan scheme amendment. So there will be no out-of-pocket costs for council. It's entirely funded by the others, by the people who own the properties. And it did come out of the logical inclusions process from 2012, Pakenham East. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paxton. And all these answers will be given in writing back to, so people have got a record of what our answers have been. I refer the last question to Mr. Andrew Barr, Acting General Manager for Assets and Services. Thank you, Mr. Barr.
Just for everyone in the audience, the third question that Ms O'Connor has provided was, what council action is planned to deal with the serious condition of the large amount of rural roads that are in urgent need of improved maintenance works? Thank you for the question. In response, in addition to the usual seasonal issues that summer presents, the first 4 months of this year were some of the driest we've had in recent history. The immediate issues associated with extremely dry conditions have abated with changed weather conditions of late, and the average condition of the unsealed road network is now much better than it was 6 months ago. Furthermore, in the 2018-2019 Capital Works budget, there's a provision for $20 million to go towards upgrading strategic unsealed roads across the Shire. The significant investment in roads announced in next year's budget is a clear indication of Council's commitment to drive long-term improvement in the road network. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. That concludes community question time, and we will resume our agenda. Two matters withdrawn. Yep. Which I think is. Yep. So I've got that concludes. Here we go. Beautiful. Back on to business. Yep. Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. Just gave a little bit of time for the people who have put their questions forward to just leave. We will move on. Finishes community question time. We'll move on to ordinary business. Council conducts its meetings according to a consent agenda. Councillors have advised of the matters for consideration this evening as they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The items withdrawn for discussion this evening are item number 1, Pakenham Car Park Precinct Plan Amendment C244E, withdrawn by Councillor Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolve to adopt the updated Pakenham Parking Precinct Plan, May 2018. Resolve that authorisation be sought from the Minister for Planning under Section 9 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 to prepare Amendment C244 to introduce a parking overlay to Pakenham Activity Centre to provide a statutory mechanism to collect a financial contribution where permits are issued for a reduction in car parking, and include the Pakenham Parking Precinct Plan 2018 as a reference document in the Cardinia planning scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jodie Owen. Mover to speak. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Owen, too, for seconding this important plan. Councillors and members of the gallery may recall the Pakenham Structure Plan back in March 2017, which we adopted, which looked at the future of the Pakenham Activity Centre and provided a vision for the future of our iconic town centre. One of the major concerns raised was around the issue of car parking in that activity centre. And given that we live in the outer suburbs with limited public transport options, that is when compared to metropolitan Melbourne, we are by and large a car-dependent community. And that's why it's critical that we have adequate car parking across the Pakenham Activity Centre to ensure our residents have access to community services, recreation, and also a positive retail experience. This car parking plan was developed in conjunction with council officers, external consultants, and a community reference group comprising of 6 community members. To generate this plan, data needed was gathered regarding occupancy rates across the activity centre. This data was collected over a 2-day period, the first being on Thursday the 1st of December 2017, and the second being on Saturday the 3rd of December same year. This showed that there was adequate car parking supply within the activity centre. When we refer to adequate car parking, we refer to a benchmark of less than 85% occupancy during a peak period. For Pakenham within the activity centre, it was around that 62%. So that did show overall in that centre that there was adequate parking. What is interesting to note is that short-term parking around the main street was around 86%. So in addition to this, it also appeared that people were overstaying their allocated time restrictions on these central car parks in the main street. And that would be one reason why people would find it difficult to find a car park down the main street of Pakenham. In terms of disabled parking access, the report shows that 71% of spaces being occupied. Personally, I do struggle to believe this. You speak to anyone trying to find an accessible car park in the Shire, they'll share similar concerns. But I am happy with the revised version of this plan that point number 6 highlights the need for further accessible parking options well and truly into the future. So the draft plan was adopted back in December 2017 and was put out on public exhibition between the 23rd of January and the 5th of March. Overall, we actually had 90 interactions with residents and a series of community consultations which happened. So in response to the feedback, there were some minor changes, but the most significant, as I've already mentioned, was around 6.1, which is accessibility, which specifically mentioned to ensure the car parking plan adequately caters for improvement to parking for people with a limited mobility. This is probably one of the most important aspects of the strategy, because we know the broader social ramifications that are experienced by communities whom are excluded from activity centres, particularly based around the issue of access. A key part to this plan is also for a parking overlay to be applied to commercial areas of the activity centre. This is important as it allows Council to implement the overlay into the Cardinia planning scheme, which will allow Council to employ a statutory mechanism that will collect financial contributions which can be paid in place when a business is unable to provide adequate car parking for their activity. Quite often, as Council, we see developers and business owners seeking a reduction in the mandated car parking requirements. And from time to time, this request can be accommodated, but if we continue to allow this to happen, with no mechanism to be able to put financial contributions back into the system, we do risk a mass undersupply of parking within the Pakenham Activity Centre, which isn't helpful, particularly when we have a structure plan which looks at increasing investment within our main street. So by collecting these financial contributions, that will enable us as a council to not only contribute to future car parking stock within the activity centre, but we can also enhance our current facilities. So tonight, I'm seeking Council's approval to adopt this revised plan, and which will revolve us seeking approval from the Minister to place this plan into the planning scheme. So if we do pass this tonight, we're at stage 1 of the planning scheme process, whereby we will see it go out once again to the community to have their say by lodging a plan. But overall, I think this is a positive plan for the community and does address some of those broader issues of inclusion and access to the activity centre, which perhaps weren't as prominent in the first plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Seconded to speak. Thank you, Councillor Jodie Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. As always, following Councillor Schilling, I don't think there's really much more that needs to be said. I will say that I firmly support this plan. I believe, as Councillor Schilling said, at times it does look like the activity is lower within the centre, but I can guarantee you around school drop-off time and after school, when mums want to go quickly to the shops or whatever, you'll find it's pretty hard to get a parking space around then. Also, I concur with Councillor Schilling that I find it a little bit difficult to believe, although I trust our officers, that there is not as much disabled parking as what I think there should be. I think we've got an Access Collusion Committee that have spoken on this before, and I think we can always do better, is where I'd like to go with this. So that's all I have to say, and I strongly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Bret Owen. Thank you, Councillor Bret.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. I support the motion before us. Long history of car parking in Pakenham. I remember back in 2005 when I joined this council, we were debating reductions of car parking, but at the time there was no mechanism for council to charge cash in lieu. I think there was legislative issues with the ability for council to arrange cash in lieu arrangements, but now this motion before us will allow us to do that. Over the years, long history in relation to car parking, Pakenham Council has purchased land in James Street, Pakenham. At the moment, it is a gravel car park. It's probably underutilised, but when we charge development, this cash in lieu of car parking, council will get funds which will seal those car parking, and it might be a multi-deck car park in the future. So it's great that this will bring upon that mechanism for council to raise the revenue to upgrade this car parking. I think this is a great thing. I think we still do have issues around long-term staff car parking in close proximity, but hopefully through this process we can address that as well. Because at the moment I think we've only got a couple of places for long-term staff car parking. So thank you, Councillor Schilling. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I will go back to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to both the Councillor Owens for their input. As I mentioned earlier in the report, we had 90 community interactions during this plan, which is quite a large number of people. And one of the groups which were consulted were our Access and Inclusion Committee. They serve an incredibly important part in our community, and particularly around our council buildings and council facilities, making sure that our plans are accessible for those living with a disability. And along with that, they form one part of a number of key stakeholder groups which we do get involved when commenting on council plans. I think it's really important to highlight to the community that all of our major plans that we undertake, all of our major reviews, all have an element for community consultation involved. And councillors will all vouch for me here. When we get our councillor reports, we actually do see what the community have said in the community input, and almost always you'll see an element of that, even if it's in the form of an amendment to a plan, or you'll see that included in the actual draft plan. So I'd encourage people to look out for these opportunities when they do come about. Unfortunately, once we've approved spending or implemented a plan, it is too late, as quite often you do see that feedback coming to us after all the community consultation has taken place. So you can look on the council website. There is a section around what plans are currently up for community consultation, and council are always very obliging and very proactive in seeking that feedback. I'd just like to quickly congratulate the car parking reference group, who included Dominique, Tony O'Hara, who's in the gallery tonight, Michael Porter, Terry Baldwin, David Young, former councillor David Young, for their ongoing commitment of this plan. They met several times throughout this process, and we can never underestimate the benefits of having our local community involved, who live and in our community and do utilise these facilities on a daily basis. So I hope council get behind this recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. We will go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item number 2, adoption of the planning scheme amendment C220, implementation of the Beaconsfield structure plan, withdrawn by Councillor Bret Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following. 1, adopt the modified amendment C220 to the planning scheme under section 29 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and submit the amendment to the Minister for Planning for approval under section 31 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder, please? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, and thanks for your interest in this item. The Beaconsfield Structure Plan was adopted by Council in December 2013 and implemented as an incorporated document in the Cardinia planning scheme through Amendment C198, which was approved in May 2016. The approval of this amendment was received with the following 2 conditions. 1, that the built form from requirements within the Beaconsfield Point, Woodlands Grove and Princess Highway Precinct be implemented via a more appropriate planning control. And 2, an expiry date be placed on the structure plan to ensure that the objectives of the structure plan are achieved by implementing its requirements regarding built form through the appropriate planning tool. So in response to the above, 3 draft design and development overlays, DDOs, have been prepared based on the objectives and strategies as set out in the structure plan to guide built form outcomes for the following 3 precincts. So these are the Princess Highway Gateway Precinct, which is abutting the Cardinia Creek, the council's boundary with Casey. Also the proposed DDO 6 Beaconsfield Point Precinct, and the proposed DD07 Woodlands Grove Precinct. The amendment was on public exhibition from the 9th of November 2017 to Monday the 11th of December. 6 submissions were received in response to the amendment. 5 submissions were supportive and sought no changes to the amendment. There was 1 submission received from a group of businesses. They raised concerns in relation to the original Beaconsfield structure plan, but this could not be addressed through this process. That was addressed by council and by previous panels at previous sort of processes. So we note their objection or their submission, but we believe that was addressed back then. In relation to some changes, so the panel hearing was held. Council submitted that the mandatory minimum heights were appropriate for the following reasons. Creates a sense of arrival to Beaconsfield, provides for a mixed-use development of the precinct, creates active frontages, surveillance and access to the Cardinia Creek landscape, and decreased surface car parking to prevent car parking from dominating the precinct, strengthens the Beaconsfield town centre. So the panel report was provided to council and released to the public on the 24th of April. The panel report provides the following recommended changes to the original report. The panel recommends that the Cardinia Planning Scheme Amendment C220 be adopted as exhibited, subject to the following. Amend design and development overlay schedules 5, 6 and 7 as shown in the appendices. With exceptions that the design and development overlay for Schedule 5 be further revised. So Schedule 5 was the Gateway Precinct abutting the creek. Modify the 6 dot point under 2.0 buildings and works to read should meet the minimum building height as specified in Table 1 of the schedule. Modify Table 1, built form requirements for specific areas to read preferred minimum building height. So this is the only change for the whole document, and there were some concerns from Beaconsfield residents over the years about the height in relation to particularly the Gateway Precinct. So instead of, I'll just get my notes, the changes talk about instead of must be a certain height, there's a preferred. So that gives an opportunity for any development in that area to consider council's preferred option, but it's removing the must. But there is, as per the original report, a cap in relation to the height as the maximum height. And I know residents in Beaconsfield had a real concern about that may increase. That does not change as outlined in the Beaconsfield structure plan. So it's just the minimum height as removing the word must to preferred. So that is the only change. So we might see a single-storey development at Gateway site. Council did express concerns through the panel because we don't want to see a car parks at this Gateway precinct, but hopefully that concern will be addressed through the other overlays in the precinct. I just want to thank everyone involved in this process. I'd like to thank the planners. I understand we've got the President of the Beaconsfield Progress Association in the gallery, Mr Graham Taylor. Thank you, Graham, for attending today and your interest in this item. So, councillors, I support this motion. I think it's appropriate for Beaconsfield as we watch Beaconsfield grow into the future. I think it'll be a great outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Seconded to speak, Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to endorse what Councillor Owen has said. There's been a lot of work in this report, and it's been before Council a couple of times, and also compliment the planning people for the work they've put into it, and I think it will be a big boon for Beaconsfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I will go back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Just in conclusion, the changes made to the amendment as recommended by the panel include altering the mandatory minimum height controls in DD05 to be discretionary controls, and also minor administrative changes in the drafting of the DDOs, including minor alterations to Figure 1 in DD05, in order to simplify the concept and provide clearer definitions of the precinct boundaries. The approval of Amendment C220 will strengthen policy control in relation to the management of the design and built form outcomes of the Beaconsfield Structure Plan. Therefore, it is recommended that Council resolve to adopt Amendment C220 to the Cardinia planning scheme under Section 29 of the Act, and submit to the Minister of Planning for approval under Section 31 of the Act. So, just in summary, I think this document, provides some assistance to existing businesses, existing residents in Beaconsfield of what can happen in Beaconsfield, the design guidelines and the controls. So I think that's a good thing. So if people have got questions about how Beaconsfield will develop in the future, they can refer to this document and have certainty of what the town will look like going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item number 3, Amendment C232, Officer Precinct Structure Plan Review for the Officer Township Centre, withdrawn by Councillor Bret Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following recommendation. 1, endorse Attachment 1, Attachment 2 and Attachment 3 as Council's submission to Amendment C232 and send to the Victorian Planning Authority. 2, that the Victorian Planning Authority, VPA, be advised that Council acknowledges that the VPA has agreed to address the issues with regard to A, the average net density of 15 dwellings per developable hectare within the precinct, as opposed to the 19 dwellings per developable hectare identified in the amended Officer Precinct Structure Plan document, and B, working with Council to ensure the accuracy of the detailed land use budget, which has a flow-on effect to the information in several tables in the amended Officer Precinct Structure Plan and the DCP document. I move so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen. Do I have a seconder, please? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ray Brown. Back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Brown. The Victorian Planning Authority, in consultation with the Cardinia Shire Council, has reviewed the Officer Precinct Structure Plan, Officer PCP. This document was adopted in 2011, the original Officer Precinct Structure Plan, and obviously things have changed over time. So it was timely for a review to occur. So the Minister has asked the Victorian Planning Authority to do so, because there is concerns about maybe red tape, restrictions on development. So Council obviously was supportive of this review. This review is being run by Victorian Planning Authority. So Council is a stakeholder in this, but it is run by the Victorian Planning Authority. So 3,000 letters have been distributed across Officer. There was a reasonable newsletter summary of what was happening. There was 2 information evenings held in the Council offices with a number of people attending to get some information. So on page 4 of the report, it looks at the the main differences of the 2 documents, the original Officer PSP and the amended draft as per 2018. So in the original documents, there were 75 objections. Now it's being revised to 9. 170 guidelines that must be met. That's been reduced to 18 guidelines that must be met. So there's a theme that it's simplifying the document, simplifying the red tape. But as per this report, Council did have concerns, and we've addressed that in this report, and we'll let the Victorian Planning Authority know. And that is the average net densities of 15 dwellings per developable hectare within the precinct. That is as opposed to the 19 dwellings per developable hectare identified in the amended document. So that will have a huge impact if this went through, having 19 dwellings compared to 15 per hectare. That will put pressure on the facilities that we need to provide, how they get paid for as well. So it's really important that is addressed. And I understand through speaking to the planners that there appears to be some traction in that space in relation to understanding that concern, and also working with Council to ensure the accuracy of the detailed land use budget, which has a flow-on effect to the information in several tables in the amended Officer Precinct Structure Plan and DCP document. Can I just ask a question to the General Manager of Planning and Development, Mr. Andrew Paxton, in relation to what that actually means, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the original scope of the review was focusing on the town centre. The VPA, when they were undertaking the review for the last period of time, seemed to look at the broader catchment, and in that they changed the densities across the board. The VPA verbally have acknowledged that that wasn't their intention to do that, so they've agreed to take it back, leave it at the densities, because that changes the whole land use budgets, changes the infrastructure we need and services we need for our communities. So there's a commitment that'll be changed, but that'll now need to be done through the panel process.
Thank you, Mr. Paxton. I just want to thank the residents and those people that have got an interest in this, who provided their feedback at these forums and submissions. Obviously, this is just the start of the process, so I encourage them to continue to be involved and be part of any panels that might occur. So thank you, councillors, for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bret. Owen, seconded to speak. Thank you, Councillor Ray Brown.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Nothing further to add.
Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I will go back to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. This is a big item affecting officers. So it's important that we do talk about it. There is some significant changes proposed. So I encourage residents and any interested persons to have a look at this document and see how it may change. I note that we have received, as I said before, numerous submissions, including from the Officer and District Community Association. They had concerns or requests that the gateway to Siding Avenue be more appropriate to a more of a landscape design than built form, complementary to the opposite side of the highway to where the officer memorial gates are as well. So we note their comments, and I hope that through this process that is acknowledged and hopefully listened to. So council submission to this amendment will be submitted following today's council meeting. The VPA has acknowledged to address the issues with regard to the average net density of 15 dwellings and working with council to ensure the accuracy of the detailed land use budget. So I move so. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item number 6, appointment of the Chief Executive Officer Recruitment Agency, withdrawn by Councillor Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that MacArthur Management Services Victoria Proprietary Limited be engaged by Council to assist with the recruitment of a new Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. As most people will now be aware, our current Chief Executive Officer, Gary McQuillan, has lodged his resignation effective from the 5th of October 2018. As part of the recruitment process, the CEO selection panel, consisting of myself, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Wilmot, Councillor Ross, Councillor Bret Owen and Councillor Jodie Owen, interviewed a series of executive search agents and have nominated MacArthur Management Services as our preferred option. As a collective, we believe MacArthur are best placed to assist Council with recruiting a new CEO. As a council, this is probably one of the most important decisions we'll have to make in this 4-year term. Hiring a new CEO comes with great responsibility, as it is the CEO who will steer the organisation through record growth, a shrinking bottom line and a range of social issues which require constant monitoring, planning and intervention. I hope my colleagues will support this recommendation tonight, and I also believe the MacArthur are best placed to source not only the best available talent for the position, but also assist Council with the selection process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Seconded to speak. Thank you, Councillor Tisha Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support this recommendation tonight. It was quite an experience to have these agencies come and pitch to us, and I'm pleased that they did, because it really gave us a good feel of what they were going to provide in services, and also just what sort of people they are and how relatable and how flexible they'll be. This is a really important decision that we face. Hiring the next CEO is going to lead this Shire forward into the future, and it's important that we get the best person for the job. I believe that MacArthur is the most experienced agency in recruiting CEOs to local government in Victoria, and that holds well for me, because they will have a good source of people to tap on the shoulder, potentially, as well as they are seen as a leader in this field, and people will go to them looking for these sorts of positions. So I'm more than confident that they will do us a very good job, and I'm sure that we will all learn a lot in this process. It's not something that any of us have had any great amount of experience, some more than others, but we're all pretty much looking for the right agency to guide us through this very important process, and I'm sure MacArthur will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I will just say a few words if I can, which I can. After, I must say, the panel and the councillors went to much trouble interviewing the different prospective agencies that we could go through. I must say, three were very, very close to getting the opportunity, but only one had to get it in the end. I must say, as Councillor Letitia Wilmot said, that they were the most currently experienced group that we did see, and I feel very confident that they will draw some really good applications for the opportunity to meet with them about a new CEO. So if they can just draw the applicants, Council will go through the process and work out who we think will be the best person to head the organisation moving into the future. So that's all I've got to say, and I'll move back. Were there any other speakers? No. If not, I will move back to the mover, Councillor Michael Schilling, to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, overall, I'm incredibly confident that MacArthur will be the right management service to give us a list of potential applicants for the position, and I'm also confident in the ability of the CEO selection panel within Council that we will do the right thing by the community and by the Council as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item number 7, tender report contract number 17/55 Lang Lang Sports Pavilion, detailed design and contract administration, withdrawn by Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that a decision on tender report contract 17/55 Lang Lang Sports Pavilion, detailed design and contract administration be deferred until the June 2018 General Council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have a seconder, please, to the motion? Councillor Bret Owen. Back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a fairly emotional subject for some, but contrary to the belief of other people. I do care for our communities. You may recall back when Lang Lang Stage 1 was going to take place, I challenged the position of the place. Why has it been put out so far from the township of Lang Lang, nearly 3 mile, 5.1 kilometres? And I was defeated in that, and so that's where the pavilion is, and that is where the facility is. Now, with regard to the pavilion, I'm concerned that the specifications may be extreme based on the amount of capital that's been allocated to this project. The amount of capital allocated is 7.5 million, where we built a pavilion, state-of-the-art pavilion over at Heatherbray for 2.73 million. Now, I know that they're never going to be the same, that there've got to be some change, but I think a 5 million difference in pavilions is a bit extreme, and we should challenge that and say, are our specifications right? Which lead to this quotation of what it's going to cost. All I'm asking for is a deferment so the review of those specifications can take place. It's interesting to note that the stage 1 include construction of 2 football ovals, 4 netball courts, car parking, sealed with 530 spaces, access roads, wetland and storm water system, oval irrigation and facility sports lighting, which cost 6.189 million. The pavilion, 7.523. So the building is going to cost more than all of that work. And I'm questioning it. That's all I'm doing. I'm asking the officers to go back to the drawing board and say, look, have we got this right? Is this what this is going to come out at? I appreciate that, and it's been made notice of tonight, that the Lang Lang Netball Club's playing in a chook shed. But now, the way we're going, they'll go from a chook shed to a penthouse. And the football club, they'll go from, I guess, a play-out paddock, if you like, to the MCG. That's the comparison you could make there. Nobody's arguing that they needed these new facilities. I want them to have the new facilities, but I want it done right. I have an obligation as a councillor to question these things when there's such a discrepancy. And I don't think I'm the only one. Perhaps I might be. Perhaps this motion might get defeated, and I'm the only one that sort of says that why should a pavilion cost more than all those works? So anyway, councillors, I put that forward because I'm concerned of the variance in the costings, and particularly the fact that the pavilion's going to cost more than all the other works combined. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Seconder to speak. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. It is definitely a challenging issue, and I fully appreciate the urgent need that the Lang Lang community need for new sporting facilities. That is very clear. Their current facilities is totally unacceptable, and a later item we adopt the budget, and I will be fully supporting the budget. And at the moment, the budget has over $4 million this year, and a further 2 and a bit for the following year. So I'm committed to obviously financially funding that facility. It is a must. Can I ask a question to the CEO, please, in relation to, I don't think the report talks about the scope of the future pavilion. What sort of spaces, what sort of change rooms will be on the first floor? Obviously, we've estimated a cost of $7.5 million for this pavilion. Can you give us some scope about what could be there, both at the ground level and the first floor? Thank you.
Well, let's first of all talk about the ground level. This is a unique building because the first time we are building a pavilion that will incorporate football, cricket, netball and tennis, and this is the first time that we have done this. Usually we would build separate facilities or pavilions for tennis, separate facilities for football and cricket, and a separate pavilion for netball. So it is quite a unique space. The ground floor obviously consists of the club rooms, whether it's for the netball, football, cricket and tennis. It will have unisex facilities, so male and female can participate. Sports can be participate at Lang Lang. There's umpires' rooms, first aid room, a canteen, storage space, etc., etc. And the specifications on the ground floor are no different to what we would build at Worrell, what we would build at Gembrook, or what we would build at Chandler. They're in accordance with the standards. In 2012, the council adopted a standards which applies to these facilities. So that represents the ground floor. So it's not getting any more or any less than is prescribed within that within our standard facilities policy. The first floor is a social space, and council has over the last few years, wherever possible, been trying to establish a social space which is creating more than just a sporting space, but more of a community space, so a wider group of people can access these facilities rather than simply a sporting club. So the upstairs is a social space. It will have naturally toilet facilities, some form of kitchen facilities, but there's nothing. That's what it is, just a social space.
And can I ask, how does that social space compare to council's policy in relation to funding social spaces? Can you outline what that policy is?
Yeah,
Yep, thank you.
The council has a standard policy of providing around about providing 90 square metres, particularly in respect of sporting and particularly in respect of football and cricket spaces, but in respect of Home Park, in respect of Chandler and hopefully Gembrook, where there is a possibility to create these first floor social community spaces, they are provided, and the sources of funding to enable that to be created either through someone privately providing that money, and that was the case at Home Park Road. Secondly, at Chandler, the club had received 500,000. We allowed that to go through to the club. They had 250,000 in donations, and through the members of the club, they were able to create the first floor, and we created the base standard club rooms on the ground floor, and they created the first floor social community space because they had a government grant which we provided back to them. They had 250,000, and they used their members to do a lot of the building works. In respect of Gembrook, there is $1 million being provided to Gembrook. We've allocated $1 million. We're still working through how that arrangement will allow us, if possible, to put a first floor social community space at Gembrook. So we haven't quite got there yet. In respect of Lang Lang, the Bendigo Community Bank have contributed $3.3 million towards this project. We've also received a grant of $1.5 million. So it's a little bit different. Where in terms of this space, we are the contractor or the provider, and we will provide that first floor space. But the money to create the first floor is going in part from the Bendigo Community Bank and in part from government funding.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, about the history about the other reserves. I just, here we've got a ward councillor, and I appreciate there's different views across the table, and we're all very passionate about our community. I just support a ward councillor that's asking for 1 month's time to get our head around this. It is a massive investment of $7.5 million over 2 years. It is very needed, but is that the pavilion that's needed for this reserve? And I think we as a council have got policies around social space and precedents that we must be aware of, because we've got other rec reserves around our Shire that we need to be fair and reasonable in relation to our investments at such facilities. That's all I will say. So I will ask, I'll support Councillor Brown in his 1 month deferment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, and look, I want to thank my councillors for their words. There can be no debate. There's no denying. We've already spoke that before. There's no polite way of saying it. The current football, cricket, and netball facilities at Lang Lang are easily the worst. They are the worst we have in our Shire. As a ward councillor, as one of the ward councillors, it is not a situation I'm very proud of. But after years of consultation with the local sporting clubs and community groups, and the support of the Bendigo Bank, the Community Bank of Lang Lang, and the federal government, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, I thought. I was heartened that Lang Lang will soon have the type of facility it deserves, and the type of facility that other communities in our Shire enjoy now. Instead, I'm saddened to find ourselves here again tonight with the future of this project now up in the air after years and years of debate and discussion. I believe all the questions and answers have been set by the staff and the CEO on this particular project. We have the opportunity here to be ahead of the game. Excuse the pun, Mr. Mayor. We have that opportunity. Like, as in, I note that the item tonight, number 3, brought up the officer review on the precinct plan. Wow, who would have thought officer that was stuck in the middle of nowhere? It was stuck in the middle of nowhere. There was no houses anywhere around that officer rec reserve. And look at it now. What a wonderful council back in those years we could look at and say they did a fantastic job to have the foresight to build that and have it organised in front of us, in front of that game. And that's what I think we need. We need it in Lang Lang. We all know how important sporting clubs are the fabric of our rural, and I mean rural, townships. And they are the glue that keeps our Shire together, the hub around which many of our communities revolve. Sadly, the facility at the showgrounds, which is privately owned land, has reached the end of its life. And the single netball court does not meet the state standard and is so bad that the club could face expulsion from the league, and they are losing players to other clubs, and without their help, their future is very grim. So that's your chook shed. There's your chook shed. Yeah, it was mentioned before. And that's what many of the local clubs that have played there over the years call the netball facility. The football and netball ovals are substandard and often unplayable at Lang Lang in the showgrounds. So much so that the respective leagues have threatened to remove some of the home games from the club. The existing club rooms do not meet council's current facilities. They do not comply with the relevant disability access requirements. They have no provision for female change rooms to meet the growing participation in a form of female sport, as we know. And they are unavailable and unsuitable for the broader community. All clubs are struggling to retain existing players, let alone attract new ones, and as many others in the area, have serious concerns about their future viability. So it's clear the facilities do not meet the needs of the current users, let alone the future population of the area, which will grow significantly over the coming years, like it did in Officer. We're a progressive council, I thought. Very progressive. I'd like to remind councillors and the gallery of the work we are doing to provide modern, accessible community sporting and recreation facilities in other parts of the Shire, including, and I'm going to say that I support those other projects in other ward areas, not just my own. This is not just about me. It's not about me. It's about the Langland community. And I support these projects because they are for our community as a whole, as the Cardinia Shire. The new netball facility in Emerald, it's one on its own. Fantastic for Emerald. A new community hub in Emerald. We're not building a Langland community hub at the same time. These are all being done at the same time. The pavilion developments at Worrell, Chandler and Genbrook Reserves. We talk about numbers in Officer, that's what I'm talking about. We've got the same thing. A 10-year program to upgrade all the netball facilities across the Shire. This is on top of the resurfacing of the ovals at Chandler, Narnagoon, Coorup and Genbrook Reserves, and the future plans for Worrell and Officer Reserves, oval number 2. There you are. So let's not forget, Langland has received more government funding and external funding than any of these projects. As the CEO stated, $3.3 million from the community bank, the Langland. The Langland Community Bank, wow. We're committed to utilise these funds. We have to show support for these community banks, who I think are the greatest thing we could ever have in our community. The Langland Community Bank has got right behind this. We just can't give them a tin shed or a chook shed, if you want to call it that. We've got to respect their financial input. This project provides a community hub with spaces available for a range of community groups and users, not just a football club. It's a home for the Rotary Club, the CERT team, the emergency CERT team down there, and will be available for hire for functions and events. There will be shared paths around the facility for walking, cycling and passive recreation. What a great result. We should be proud to move this project forward. So the project is much bigger than just a sporting club and their players. It's a benefit to the whole community of Langland. I appreciate the costs may seem to be high at first glance. You might say chicken feed. However, we are building only one pavilion which will house the seniors, juniors, football club, the cricket, netball and tennis teams as well. So it's all together. I've got to express upon you that that town of Langland got together in those community consultation days that we had, and got together and said, we will work together. We will have the one building. And I think that's fantastic. So we don't have to build separate pavilions for each sport. The facilities are the same standards we apply to any new pavilion in the Shire. No more, no less. We didn't do this in Emerald community during consultations around the design of the hub, the Hills hub there, which started as a much smaller scale development than the one we are currently building. Councillors, we have a clear choice to make tonight, in my opinion. We can support the Langland community by delivering a facility they have been crying out for, a facility they have had input into, and one which is supported by the community bank, the Bendigo Bank and the Australian government. Or can we ignore their wishes? Give them an off-the-shelf generic facility that was designed for a totally different site, for a different community and different users. These delays, if voted on and got through, these delays, another month, here we go, a month here, a month there, a month there, we've got to keep it going, will incur financial penalties in the future. This pavilion needs to be started by December, construction. So we have to get going on this project. I'd just like to ask my fellow councillors to not support the alternative motion, and could we move on this project and get this underway for the community of Lang Lang? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other speakers? I have quite a few. I have Councillor Owen first, Councillor Schilling and Councillor Ryan, and if anyone else wants to speak about it, we'll just go in turn. Thank you, Councillor Jodie Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to support Councillor Moore in his position tonight. I think that it's very easy to see a number on a piece of paper and get terribly terrified without actually understanding what's occurring here. I just quickly wrote down that for what we're building, this one pavilion, which will house 2 football teams, junior and senior, tennis, cricket and netball, I think it's okay to say change rooms, but have been a junior coach at a football team, by having the space, coaches from Lang Lang will not be carrying around in their car footballs, water bottles, jerseys, netballs, water bottles, all the stuff that goes with sport. You can't simply say this building is just going to have change rooms, because that's not fair. Also, there's probably down the line, they'll want to have sausage sizzles and what you like at the grounds. I understand that this on a piece of paper looks frightening to residents, but what I will say is I'm so proud to be on this council. I see other councils out in other areas with growth, and they are banging houses down without thinking, like Councillor Moore said, with a progressive brain and understanding when land is developed, it's gone. You can't then bulldoze and say, whoops, main area here, let's put an oval. Right now is the time this council needs to stand up, support our local residents. There's several members who come to our meetings and remind us that we are also a rural council. We're not just about Pakenham. And I really think this project, and tonight just accepting the architect's tender, that we are saying we are all councillors of Cardinia. Tonight I'm not a Central Ward councillor. Tonight I'm a councillor of Cardinia, and I believe this is the best outcome for everybody in Lang Lang and those that will come to Lang Lang in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jodie Owen. I believe Councillor Michael Schilling wanted to have something to say. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I think it's important to, for me to say that I completely respect Councillor Brown, and I don't think anyone around this table could doubt for a single second Councillor Brown's commitment to the wider Cardinia community as well, and it shows through and through in questions and in actions as well. Quite often I'll see Councillor Brown at Central Ward events, at Rangers Ward events, travelling across the Shire. And I completely agree with Councillor Brown's point around we must be able to apply scrutiny to decisions. That is what we're elected to do. If we were to be complete puppets of an organisation, we wouldn't be elected by the people. We would be selected by the organisation to sit on a board, which wouldn't be an independent board that represents residents. However, in the decision tonight, I am satisfied with the project and will be voting against the alternate motion for a number of reasons. The first one is around infrastructure, providing infrastructure. As I represent Central Ward, but as we all know, we are councillors for the Cardinia Shire. We are constantly in Central Ward talking about infrastructure lags, about new communities that are being built without the necessary infrastructure. And look, things like public transport are a word that gets brought up quite frequently around that. We are ahead of the time here. We are ahead. We will be seeing significant growth in the more rural parts of Cardinia. We know that. We know Plan Melbourne is looks at an airport for the southeast. We know that development will be happening around this area. Also around the private investment and government investment in this project. As Councillor Moore correctly pointed out, it is one of the largest contributions that we've seen from the private sector and from the government sector. And when we're lucky enough to get this investment from these sectors, to me it's important to provide certainty and reliability, which increases our credibility when we're applying for subsequent grants for projects, particularly as we're working in this environment of that ever-shrinking dollar where everyone's competing harder and harder for their projects. I also see this underrun roof concept as a benchmark in the Shire for future pavilions and future developments. Once again, in Central Ward, quite often we do have fragmented sports across the Shire where people aren't housed together. And look, and Central Ward councils will know we're in meetings with different sporting groups talking about homes and locations and particular upgrades for their particular clubs. But once again, if you can have everything all under one roof, that does set a benchmark. Also, this decision has been made. The community consultation happened before my time on council, so pre-2016. And there's a real sense to me that the community has mobilised behind this, and the community has been involved in developing a project. I've been watching this one closely. I do regularly go out to the site to see it coming along, and just over the weekend I went to the Lang Lang Showgrounds to have a look, and look, I agree, it's completely substandard for sport within the Shire, and you can see that the new pavilion and the new facilities out at Caldermead, just what the Lang Lang community needs, and not just the Lang Lang community, but I believe that the wider Shire will also benefit from the facilities there. So that's just a bit about why I will be not voting for the alternate motion. But look, once again, I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Brown's commitment to the Shire and his effort, especially in questioning council decisions, making sure that we get good outcomes for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. I believe you had another speak with Councillor Carol Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to put a different light on things, just to bring it in the middle. As an ex-netballer, I played in that chook shed is what Councillor Moore called it. And I'll give you a little bit of a picture of it. When we were playing netball, the courts weren't the right size for a start. We were running into the side of the walls. There was a rope that used to hang continually, and we were tying it up, and it used to always fall down, so we're always at risk of choking ourselves. When the umpire was bouncing the ball, it would bounce and hit the roof and come back down and go down the other end of the court. So the netball as such wasn't actually played the way that it was played in other courts. Changing rooms we mainly went to either in our cars or in the public toilet, which was a little bit annoying, especially when it's cold weather and you're wet with wet clothing. So it gives you a bit more picture on what the courts were like to play in, and there is a need for improvement there, and I agree that we have to upgrade to improve, to bring people from the community to play sport and enjoy it on a social matter as well. But as such, I do personally have concerns, and a lot of my concerns were answered tonight when I asked some questions. So I have a bigger picture of things that helped me have a better understanding of why certain rooms, extra rooms were happening, and the specifications. I assume that if there is a room built upstairs, there would be a lift involved there, Gary, would there? Okay, and is that included in the cost? Okay then, thank you. So that, again, that just answers another question of mine. Thank you. I just see that, for me to have a better understanding, and I am thinking about the whole community. I'm not one thinking about just my ward, but I'm also here thinking about how my residents would see things, and I'm representing them. And so I will be in support of Councillor Brown in delaying it for a month or less, if possible, if we can get those thoughts through. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to, while it's on top of my brain, just address the comment just made by Councillor Ryan that perhaps we could do it less than a month. It's got to come back to another council meeting. We don't have one for another month. So it has to be a full month. If we delay it for the full month, we run the risk of this project not getting off the ground on time. We've got a deadline to meet in December, and by delaying it by a month, we are likely to miss that deadline. Funding from federal government isn't to be sneezed at. Delaying this project puts that funding for this project to risk, but it puts at risk other funds that we apply for. If they think we've had to do it before, where we've had issues with the project and we've had to delay it. This issue should not delay this project. It should not put in jeopardy future funding applications. If we get a reputation for delaying projects that have federal money, they will think twice about giving us federal money. So we do need to put this through. I understand that this is a big pavilion, a very big pavilion, to have 4 different sports all potentially playing at the same time. You can have football, 2 ovals being used, tennis courts being used, netball courts being used. You need multiple change rooms for that instance. The clubs can't all just share 1 or 2 change rooms. You have to have multiple for each group. That's why this pavilion is so big. It should be a good news story. We should be out celebrating this project. To receive that sort of private funding from the Bendigo Bank, the federal funding, and to have the 4 groups come together and agree to combine their pavilion spaces into 1 building instead of what could potentially have been 3. This is a good project. We should be celebrating it, and I will not support the alternative motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other speakers, either for or against the motion? If not, I will just say a few words on this issue. I believe this facility is absolutely needed. In fact, the facility they have at the moment is an embarrassment to council. I believe the deferment is in relation to the cost of the elements around the pavilion and the question that lies between the another facility that Councillor Brown's commented about and the facility here. So there's about roughly $5 million that he would like some more detail why the different pavilions. I must say the smaller townships outside the urban growth boundary do need to be upgraded. For anyone who's seen them, they were mostly built 30, 40, 50 years ago. We're trying to bring them into the light ages. We have a lot of people who move to Cardinia, Shire, who don't necessarily want to play for teams inside the urban growth boundary, and they want to play outside the urban growth boundary. So they need to have decent facilities outside of the urban growth boundary to go and play at as well. I must say it should be commended that the Bendigo Bank, nothing to be sneezed at, $3.3 million to be given. I must say it shouldn't be sneezed at either that the federal government's given $1.5 million. So there alone is $4.8 million given towards the project before anybody else even puts in, even before council puts in, before the club puts in, or anyone. I must say, you know, it is an understatement that this facility is urgently needed. I must say, usually I've been guided in my going in my 10th year on council by the ward councillors. I usually look to them to basically come up with a unified position on something, or a majority position whereby they come to us and they share with us why they know the community and they know what's best needed. I must say, on this occasion, we've got 2 extremely passionate ward councillors who both acknowledge that there needs to be better facilities for the community. And I must say, when it comes down to 50-50 on one, whether we delay it or whether we go ahead straight away with the project, that means I have to vote one way or the other. I don't believe in abstaining on anything. I believe I'm a councillor who was elected to vote on things, not to abstain from things, as when I was first elected on council. I must say, as a councillor who has always supported low rate increases and measured spending, I do believe I need to hear the reasoning behind what Councillor Brown has raised between the 2.7 and the $7.4 million difference between the 2 pavilions. I will say one thing though, that if this motion is defeated on the deferment, I will be supporting the project when it comes up, because it is desperately needed, and I want to support the majority of the councillors. So that is what I'm putting forward. I will move back to the mover unless there's any other speakers. If not, I will go back to the mover. Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor Ross, and thank you, councillors, for your input. And it is an emotional thing, and I would think that the state government, federal government and the banks would applaud us for being stringent and questioning things rather than just go into the Bendigo Bank and try to get a loan for something that doesn't tick all the boxes and see how you go. With regard to the one facility, that's not unique. That's happening at Heatherbrae now. The football, cricket and netball clubs all operate out of the one pavilion. So that's not unique. It will be unique at Lang Lang. I think that given the social rooms at Lang Lang are as good as any social rooms. But that's not what we're talking. We're not talking about the social rooms at Lang Lang. We're talking about a pavilion which covers these change rooms, the social rooms, and all of it. We've already conceded that the playing surfaces and the netball areas are not good enough. They're just not good enough. Nobody's arguing that. I'm just saying, or requesting, or asking, why is there a $5 million difference between the Lang Lang Pavilion, the Heatherbrae Pavilion, who are sharing the facilities, and why it costs more than the current works done combined to date? That's what I'm asking. Now, I don't want to delay the project if I don't have to. So that's what I'm asking for. Now, it's up to who can give me that information. Do we have to wait for another meeting to get, if we get that information? Or can we do it in between times? I don't know. Does somebody? Okay. Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. It satisfies me and it satisfies you. And I think really most of us here, we want to get a good result. We don't want to see money wasted. We don't want people to be able to say, look what you spent on that facility there. I believe that we can get a great facility there, but it shouldn't cost more than the total project so far combined. And I just bring you back to that one basic thing. And we can be as emotional as you like and talk about we're robbing the community, we're doing this and doing that, but it comes back to one simple thing. Why is it dearer than all the works combined? Are our specifications wrong? Are they too extreme or what? That's all I'm asking. Why have we budgeted $7.523 million for a pavilion? Get back to the crux of what I'm talking about here and why I've moved that motion. I think we all deserve to know that. So if you just want to be sheep and just follow what's put in front of you, do it. But I'm not a sheep and I won't. And the Council of Code of Conduct says that we've got to be strict, we've got to watch what we're doing, we've got to take care of the community, and that's what I'm doing. And if I have to do it again, I'll continue to do so. So, Mayor, once I get when we get some more information about exactly what we're doing there, we can move on. But not at a pavilion that's going to cost more than what's there to date. Bearing in mind, and I hesitate to say it, bearing in mind the population, the size of Lang Lang. It's like providing a Rolls Royce when they need a Kingswood. I got no objections to them having a Rolls Royce.
Councillor Brown, most people and younger people wouldn't know what a Kingswood is. You might need to use a Kia or something, a Hyundai XL or something.
Mini minor. So that's the purpose of my motion, Mayor, is to get something around this costing, rather than just putting my head in a hole and saying, well, it must be right. Now, I'm going to vote for the budget because there's lots of good things in the budget. And I would not allow this to hold the budget up. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I'd like to just mention before we go to a vote, I really do respect my fellow councillors for keeping this absolutely respectful, this passionate subject. I must say that, providing infrastructure for the community and using the ratepayers' money is always a passionate subject because you can only spend the money once. So anyway, thank you very much for that. I do respect everyone. I think you've done a really good job on a very passionate subject. Let's go to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That goes against the motion. So we go back to the original motion, which is I need someone to move. You certainly can have a division. All those in favour of the motion, please stand. We've got myself, Councillor Colin Ross, Councillor Bret Owen, Councillor Ray Brown and Councillor Carol Ryan for the motion. Sit down, please. We have against the motion, we have Councillor Graham Moore, Councillor Letitia Wilmot, Councillor Jeff Springfield, Councillor Jodie Owen and Councillor Michael Schilling. Thank you. Now, we need a mover for item number 7, which is going back to the officer's recommendation, which is item number 7, Tender Report Contract 17/55 Lang Lang Sports Pavilion, Detailed Design and Contract Administration. Do I have a mover? Councillor Graham Moore. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. I will go back to the mover, Councillor Graham.
Thank you.
Graham Moore.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I move that the tender for the contract 1755, the Lang Lang Sports Pavilion Detailed Design and Contract Administration, inclusive of Superintendent Services, submitted by Cohen Lee Architects Pty Limited for the contract sum of $250,870, excluding GST, be accepted, and the common seal is affixed to the relevant contract documents. The unsuccessful tenderers are advised accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
I think we might have actually just done that in the wrong order there, Mayor. I think the mover
mover
should
needs
speak
to
before the
speak first.
seconder.
Actually moved and seconded at the same time, quickly before the Councillor Moore had his opportunity to speak to the outside of the recommendation. I'll go back to Councillor Moore. Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Moore.
And may I firstly say, yes, this is an emotional situation, and I respect my fellow councillors for their input, the fors and against. I mean, it's a large amount of money. Yes, it's not chicken feed, as I said before. It is a large amount of money that we're dealing with, but we're dealing with a community and a need for a community that doesn't need to be held up anymore. That's already happened already, so it needs to be put forward. But I look at the architect for this that we're going to contract, which is Cohen Lee Architects, and I'm looking forward to the draft drawings of this new pavilion and having some input from the local users, the community users, and of course hopefully ourselves as councillors can get together and we can
That's all right, just hang fire. Dave's going to turn us back on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for putting me back on air. Look, there's not much more I really want to say here, Mr. Mayor. I have no hesitation in this recommendation of this architect. They're going to architecturally draw this job, design it, and oversee the project. They did the Arena Child and Family Centre in Officer, which is a fantastic building if you have a look at that, which we would all agree, I'm sure, is a great building. So I've got no hesitation to move this tender to be accepted, because the extensive consultation has been undertaken with the various community groups, as I said before, without repeating myself, in Lang Lang, who utilise this building. These groups and the Community Bank have assisted in the development of this project scope. So they've been there involved in the scope that we've all received by email. So I'll leave it to my seconder. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you. I really don't have a lot more to add to this either. I do note the comments from Councillor Moore that the community clubs and groups have already been involved in developing the scope for this project, and I am sure that the architect firm will continue to work with the community groups to make sure that they are getting the facilities that they need and they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Bret Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this motion. Just a couple of questions to the CEO or the relevant manager. This motion appoints a superintendent. Is that any different to what we've done previously in relation to appointing a superintendent for the project? Maybe the relevant acting general manager can answer that.
The provision, Councillor Owen, for the superintendent is to provide assistance during the delivery of the works. So the superintendent is a package of the works. So after the design's done, the superintendent then plays a role in the contract management, and it's currently a process that's used regularly to help aid in technical projects like this in their delivery.
Okay, just a clarification. Have we done that previously for similar projects, or is this new?
No, this has been done previously, where we have the architect who has designed the building assists us with the delivery, the contract management of that building being constructed, with the aid of the relevant project manager.
Thank you, Acting General Manager. Just one more question. Obviously, we've discussed this issue at length. Is there any idea of proposed square metre area allocations for both the ground floor or first floor? Has that been sort of estimated at this stage?
Through the Mayor, Councillor Owen, I don't have the exact figures on me at the moment, but I do understand that they have been circulated in the scope of the project to all councillors. I think it was at the end of last week, where the different floor areas were broken down by section, and most of those were in line with the council's current facility standards, but I'm afraid I can't remember them off the top of my head.
Thank you. I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. I support this motion. I've had my say. Everybody's listened, and I've listened to them. We are a council. We should fall in line. If we're going to get anything done, we should be a united team. And thank you to the people who supported my motion, and I respect the people who didn't. And I would just like to say that I hope that we can put it all behind us and work together as a team again. And I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? In that case, I'll say a few words. As I said on the previous motion, I will be supporting this motion and this, if it falls, the other one, and this one that's before us now. I believe this project is just really important. It should go ahead as soon as possible, and we need to support those, the Bendigo Bank, who gave $3.3 million, and the federal government, who gave $1.5 million, who have entrusted the confidence of the Cardinia Shire Council to invest this money wisely on this project. So I want to make sure that we can do this as quickly as we can, and I'll be supporting this stage of the project, which is the 7.4 whatever million dollars towards the pavilion. Anyway, whatever amount it was exactly. Anyway, if there's any other speakers, now that I've spoken, who want to say anything before I go back to the mover? If not, I will go back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank the councillors for their supportive comments. It's really great to have this on its way, moving in a positive direction for the community of Lang Lang, and like every delay is like we're against it. We're against everything that's happening down in that end of our Council Shire, and so it's a fair way away, and they of course will feel, as we know, the end of our Shire area, and this is a positive step, and it's a certain positive step with just to get, this is all just about getting the thing drawn. At least we can see what we're talking about once this thing's drawn by the architect, and I'm looking forward to having some form of input into that structure of the drafting side of the pavilion. I'm sure the local community will be celebrating to get involved in the drawing of this thing from the architect as well. So it's pleasing to hear, and I hopefully my fellow councillors will vote in the right direction to allow this to move forward, and we can all work together, because it's really great to see. We've got to show our community that we are a forward-moving community, and we're not backwards. We're progressive, as I said before earlier, and I think we need to show that we can get a project done and get it done and dusted, and on the ground. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Unanimously carried.
Mr. Mayor, can I just,
sorry,
for the minutes, can I
yes,
just make
absolutely.
sure that that's clearly stated? I'm sure it will be, but can that be clearly stated?
It's on tape.
Thank you.
No worries. Fantastic. I'll just reiterate again. I just think it's really good that the council can be really passionate about things, and I can tell you, people probably don't realise how passionate behind closed doors this subject is. It is really passionate by people, and they've spoken on all sides of the community on this issue, and I think it's really good that people can get past things and say, do you know what, as a team, we want to look united to support the community in getting a wonderful facility. Anyway, we'll move on to item number 8, Windermere Boulevard, withdrawn by Councillor Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to move the report recommendation listed in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jodie Owen. Back to this mover. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. Back in January 2018, I tabled a petition presented to me by a local Cardinia Lakes resident, David Roberts, who requested the installation of a crossing on Windermere Boulevard in Pakenham. I also note that Mr Roberts presented his case for the development of a future crossing during our budget submission period, and attracted numerous letters of support from residents across that estate. I do support the Cardinia Lakes residents in their request for a crossing, and I think the current state of play on Windermere Boulevard is dangerous and not in line with Council's livability plan, nor our planning principles surrounding access to healthy food and community facilities. Where the trouble is Vic Roads have refused to approve such a crossing until Council undertakes speed reduction strategies. One of these strategies includes the development of a roundabout at Bonneville Parade. This roundabout is dependent on developer contribution. So the other missing link in this story is pedestrian numbers on Windermere Boulevard. The latest data that we have shows that 16 crossings per hour occur on average, with 28 crossings during a peak period. Vic Roads require 60 crossings per hour for a crossing approval. In saying that, I'd like to argue that residents, particularly those with limited mobility, would not favour playing chicken across Windermere Boulevard to risk their personal safety. So we must remember that this section of road isn't actually a luxury for a crossing where we think this could be a nice idea to have a crossing. This is a necessity. And I'd also like to point out to the gallery and to councillors that one of the only businesses which is actually accessible to residents going by bus is a packaged liquor outlet, which once again does not fall in line with Council's planning principles and accessibility to healthy, fresh food. In a lot of respects, Council is placed between a rock and a hard space. In the interim, I would like to note that Council has installed a pram crossing, which I understand doesn't fix the traffic issue, but it does allow people who use wheelchairs and prams an access point, as dangerous as it might be once you get onto the road. Also, with the new primary school opening in 2019, Council has committed to providing school crossings in that area in high traffic spots. So we haven't actually designated a location yet, but I would say one of the potential spots would be on Windermere Boulevard, and I envisage that parents would probably use that shopping centre car park, as is done at Pakenham Springs Primary School. And I believe that council officers are also of this opinion. I understand that council can't physically install a crossing at Windermere Boulevard at this point due to a refusal from Vic Roads. I could imagine we'd be in all sorts of trouble if we just went and put it up. A crossing is proposed, the type of crossing that we would require is proposed to cost approximately $190,000, which hasn't been allocated in this budget cycle. I would have liked to have seen this money held over, awaiting Vic Roads approval for the crossing. Until we wait, hopefully the pedestrian numbers get to that 60 or the opening of the new school. But haven't been heavily involved in the budget process as all councillors have been. I wouldn't be willing to vote against the council budget because we do have a great budget with a lot of exciting infrastructure projects, but I will be continuing to monitor the situation at Windermere Boulevard in relation to two things. One of them is the developer's contribution happening to construct that roundabout, and B is in terms of pedestrian numbers. And if the time comes where Vic Roads approve this crossing because we have met their stringent criteria, I will be coming back to council and asking, potentially through a notice of motion, that we can fund this crossing in its entirety for the residents. I would like to thank council officers who have spent a lot of time on this particular issue. I do know that our traffic engineers have been out to visit local residents, so I do thank them. But look, I will, at the end of the day, continue monitoring the situation and hope that we can get a good outcome for the residents sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Seconder to speak, Councillor Jodie Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. The sad thing about Windermere Boulevard is I was actually called out to the Coles Shopping Centre when it first opened and watched, before we even got the numbers that Councillor Schilling's talking about, watching a resident in a wheelchair try and get across the road, and I literally felt sick because I could see potentially what could happen. I do thank the officers for making the pram access point. I believe that that does assist in somewhat negating it, but I will support Councillor Schilling in this one in saying that I'm right behind him in this. We will keep monitoring this. Hopefully when our mayor's out doing some advocation for the state government, he might want to slip this one in a little while, because sadly if there is an accident, as Councillor Schilling has scoped out for the gallery and for those listening, we can't just go and do this one. This one has mechanisms that are beyond our control. And even though some of the residents think we're bureaucrats, we still get bureaucrated by those that are upper from us. So this is one of those things that either Councillor Schilling and I need to know when a counter is put on the road so as we can go and get hundreds of people to run backwards and across the road, or we hope that with strong advocation and we'll continue to back the residents in hoping and getting the right outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I'll just qualify that we're not pertaining that we should be cheating on the numbers. We want genuine numbers of people driving up and down. Anyway, are there any other speakers? Councillor Graham Moore. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I back you up here, Councillor Schilling, on this particular item. I shop there. I actually go to Windermere Boulevard. There's actually, other than the liquor store over the road, there's a bakery there now, if you didn't know, and so therefore you can have a hot pie and a beer. But we just need a crossing to get across the road and back the road, you know, the chicken and the egg. Look, I believe I stand there and watch the traffic go down. Unfortunately, with the high amount of traffic that's on that Windermere Boulevard, it's downhill also. It's on a downhill slope, and they actually quite move along down there from top to the bottom, and so that makes it a lot more dangerous than what it was. But I still believe that when the schools opened early next year, when the schools open in that region, that's when I think that we'll have a full crossing, and we'll have to do that at that time. It's just a matter of patience is a wonderful thing for the residents to be able to wait. I know I've spoken to a few residents in the supermarket there that have mentioned it to me about what they want, and I can understand, you know, the dangers of getting across the road there. It's pretty bad, but I look forward to crossing going in. But I'll be supporting your recommendation, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I'll say a few words. I must say this issue in the Cardinia Lakes estate is probably, in fact, it would be, I reckon, probably the most passionate need of their community that they continue to voice to council. This will happen in the end. It will definitely happen. There will be a crossing there. I would like to think it would be done before it's urgently needed, which it's obviously urgently needed at the moment, but even before it even gets more disastrous with more people wanting to cross that road. I must say Council in the past have done our best to actually put our foot into spaces like this. When they first put up the school crossing on McGregor Road, when Heritage Springs Primary School was put in, Council put up a 40k zone in the 80k zone. It got pulled down. It got pulled out of the ground by Vic Roads. So they didn't think there should be a 40k zone at the school crossing there on McGregor Road. So Council do at times go out of our way to try and do what we think is correct and right. Unfortunately, as it's pointed out by Councillor Schilling, there is a process we need to go through, and I'd like to think that things would be done in a timely fashion. I must say, in the end on McGregor Road, we finished up with a set of lights there. So it wasn't just for school time, it was actually for all the time, for safely for people to cross. It's just a shame that it took so long for it to come in, being the only signalised place from Webster Way all the way to Princess Highway. Anyway, I will move back to the Speaker, unless there's anyone else who would like to speak to this. If not, I'll go back to the Speaker. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all the councillors that supported this tonight. I haven't got much more to say. I think it's an important piece of infrastructure that does need to be implemented sooner rather than later. As I mentioned before, there was a counter that was placed on the road to count traffic numbers. I would probably argue that the traffic counter was in the wrong location. It was further up Windermere Boulevard near the charcoal chicken shop. And if you actually look at the danger around people turning into Windermere Boulevard, I would argue that the traffic is centred a little bit more towards the main shopping centre car park as well. But there seems to be a lot of councillors on board that will closely monitor the situation, and I do look forward for an outcome for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item number 9, Little Road Bridge closure. Withdrawn by Councillor Moore. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it, that term?
It is. I made a mess of it.
I move that Council endorse the closure of the Little Road Bridge to vehicular traffic while maintaining a pedestrian and cyclist activity similar to that of a shared path. Item 2, main drain road between Little Road and Pitt Road is included in the 2018-19 resheeting program. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ray Brown. Back to the mover, Councillor Graham Moore. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
That's me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. This is another emotional. We've got a lot of emotional issues here tonight, and this is one that I don't take lightly. The Little Road Bridge has a 7-tonne load limit, and following a level 3 condition assessment in 2013, this report also identified there's a long-term solution the bridge would remain significantly strengthened or replaced to meet the traffic demands and requirements. The heritage significance of the Little Road Bridge supports extending the bridge life for as long as possible. So the bridge is in a nearly its use by date. So it's to a point where it can only be used for walking or pedestrian traffic and cycling because of the actual time it's been. It is the last bridge on the Bunyip River, or the main drain. So it's the last bridge structure that's timber. So it's one of those sort of things that we've been criticised also for probably not maintaining this bridge for as much as we should have, and that's probably the biggest part of this report. You'll find that the submitters talked about, because we under the Act, under the Local Government Act of 1989, we're required to have a public meeting, and we did. Councillor Brown and myself and a number of staff went and met the submitters to this submissions of the bridge, and a public notice was published in the council website on the 23rd of October 2017. So The public hearing was held on Tuesday the 13th of February at 7 o'clock at St Joseph's Catholic Church, which is over the road from the bridge, right directly opposite. So it was a very emotional, an emotional night we had there, and there were some very unhappy local Iona people there that wanted to keep the bridge open. And we listened. That's what we're there for, is to listen to their submissions, and I thank them for their submissions and the discussions we had on that night. There was 43 people there, so it was a pretty big meeting, Mr. Mayor. But the main concerns that were raised with like I said before, the maintenance of the bridge that has occurred on the bridge over previous years has not been there, they say. Access during the floods as the road level drops to either side of the bridge, and the quality and convenience of an alternative route due to the unsealed nature of the road. So you've got unsealed roads on the southern side of the main drain, and a sealed road on the northern side. So therefore, naturally, they want to go across the bridge and hit the bitumen road to head for Bunyip or back to Garfield on a bitumen road. And I can understand that. I respect the local residents there, but the bridge has got to a point where it's going to be non-usable by vehicular traffic. And to build a new bridge there would be $1.4 million to build a new bridge in that location. So that's why we're going to have to just close the bridge off to vehicle traffic, and just for the safety of the local residents there with farming equipment, those type of things that go over a bridge like that, particularly if you talk about a fire truck that's full of water on a bridge that could possibly be unstable, as our reports have it. So the way to keep it, the way to make it significant and keep it within our community is to shut it off to vehicular traffic and keep it as a significant timber bridge within our shire. We get criticised quite often about maybe not supporting buildings that are old and in the heritage situation. So this is I guess the best result of a bad situation, if you want to call it that, under this circumstance. But I'll leave some for my seconder to speak on, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Going over to the seconder. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I did attend that meeting with Councillor Moore, and I learned how to duck and weave like you wouldn't believe. He did a sensational job. They were all out for us, and he just kept diverting the conversation back to where it should be, and I congratulate him after that meeting, by the way, and he did a great job. Look, I support this motion, even though the community is up in arms about it in certain respects, but when it all boiled down, I think the main thing was that they needed to get onto bitumen as quick as they could, and they had a problem with the roads on either side of the bridge, the south side of the bridge, connecting with other bridges. And as Councillor Moore said, thousands of dollars annually are spent on this bridge just to keep it in ship shape. It's got to the stage now to enable vehicular traffic to go over it. It needs to be replaced, and we'd lose the heritage look of the bridge. I see that it costs about $1.4 million to replace the bridge, which is a lot of money. However, I think that we owe it to the residents there to provide an alternative, and we need to provide them with a good alternative rather than the little dirt road they've got now, gravel road they've got now, narrow road, and I'm assured that it's going to be resheeted and widened because there's a whole heap of residents that will go past their front gate that normally would not get that particular traffic. It's a shame really that it's going to happen, but it is going to happen. It's going to fall down if we don't do something about it, replace it. I think there's still work to do for pedestrian and bicycle traffic because they say they'll fall through the holes between the planks. But I suspect that replacing it and doing some work with that road, I think that's critical to the success of this motion, and to get acceptance is to get something done on that road and something done good. It's 1 kilometre of road. It's not a lot of road, but I think that because we're taking such an asset away from the community who feel cheated by it, I think we should do our best to get that particular length of road done ASAP before we close the bridge. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I'd just like to comment on this. I know that both ward councillors have worked extremely hard on this project after going to a passionate meeting down there where they came back and they shared with council staff that it needed to be a better solution than just closing the road and not investing in another option. I believe they've looked at a reasonable option there as an outcome, and I look forward to seeing how that works out for the community. I must say, Councillor Brown, when you said it's a pedestrian and a bicycle crossing, you're worried about people falling between the cracks. They must be big cracks in that bridge, I tell you. The bicycle wheels only. Thank you for stipulating that. Just making sure. Anyway, was there any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I will go back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for your second. Yes, it was an entertaining night in some ways, that meeting. It's memorable in some form or other. Councillor Brown did speak as well on the night, don't you worry. And we all had our chance, and the submitters, I must admit, I want to thank them for their input and their emotion on the night. It was really a great night to be out with the community all the same. They might have been warm, and it might have been they might have been unhappy about the situation, but really, you're talking about consultation with our community. We did that. We did that as a council, as a general council, and so I applaud Councillor Brown and our staff for being there to answer the questions, even though I did throw them under a bridge a couple of times. But there's a joke in there too, also about the bridge. Look, this situation will prolong and allow this bridge to stay in our records for 10 to 20 years at least, having it as a pedestrian and a cycle bridge. Of course, making a cycle bridge or a pedestrian bridge, it gives us an opportunity to get allowances from the state government. We can get funding for those type of facilities, those infrastructures for down the line, so we can maintain it and keep it up. And look, I hope that the local residents down there accept this and accept the road. I agree that that's about all we can do, is just have a resheet the road there and widen it to give that 1 kilometre bit of road on the southern side a chance. They really did want the 2.3 kilometres, which is back up to the Bunyip Bridge, back up to the Medalla Bridge, Bunyip Medalla Bridge, but that was out of the question. And of course, naturally, we did talk about bitumising the road also, but that would be a small bitumen section of 1 kilometre amongst all these dirt roads would be pretty strange for starters. So hopefully, and we'll be looking at it to make sure that they get the right result for that small community of Iona, and I'm looking forward to the road being done and that down the track. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item number 11, adoption of council plan and council plan actions 2018-2022. Withdrawn by Councillor Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you. I'd like to move that Council adopt the draft council plan as listed in the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bret Owen. Back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you again. The budget as presented tonight is the financial instrument by which the council plan is to be delivered. Our vision as the Shire is for Cardinia to be developed in a planned manner to enable present and future generations to live healthy and productive lives and to enjoy the richness of diverse and distinctive characteristics of the Shire. To achieve this, we require a well-managed and sustainable budget to be presented. But this is just one element of delivering the council plan, and if we are to enable future generations to live healthy and productive lives within Cardinia, We also need an effective council planning framework to provide guidance to us as the current council, as well as future councils in decision making. The council plan presented tonight provides that framework and guidance. The plan presented tonight sets out how we as a council will deliver on our vision and how we manage our progress in achieving that plan. To measure our performance, we monitor the financial performances of the organisation against the annual budget and longer-term financial outlooks as presented in the draft budget. We report on progress towards achieving outcomes contained in this plan. Each heading within the plan has actions linked to them, and achievement of these actions is reported quarterly to a public council meeting and is accessible via the council's website for public to view. And we also measure how satisfied our community is with our performance. I'm delighted to say that one of the big enhancements to council's reporting on the council plan will be available to the public for the plan as presented tonight. Council will have invested significant time and resources to be able to present to the public via our website real-time data of its performance against the council plan. This will provide a level of transparency previously not available to any council within Victoria. We will no longer have to wait for a quarterly report. You can see it daily. When read together with the council plan document and budget document, will give residents a detailed insight on how council allocates its resources across the services it delivers to the community. Utilising the online reporting, residents will no longer have to wait for the quarterly update, as the information will be available 24 hours a day for viewing. I don't intend to go through the financial components of the plan, as these will be discussed, I'm sure, by my colleagues as part of the budget adoption. But I would like to highlight some of the work that is attached in the plan. Attached plan is committed to council too. As a council, we are committed to working closely with our community and stakeholders to carefully plan and manage our growth, to ensure we cater for present and future generations of residents, while also considering the natural and built environment. Initiatives to reduce energy consumption, greenhouse gas emissions and waste, while improving sustainable water practices and enhancing local biodiversity are among the priorities of this plan. As one of the fastest growing councils in Australia, one of the key roles for this council is to create, support and advocate for economic development opportunities that will bring investment to Cardinia Shire to ensure employment opportunities for our current and future residents. Business growth and investment are vital to building sustainable communities, and we will continue to support business and tourism to foster local employment. Cardinia has 30 townships, and the need to ensure all members of the community enjoy the benefits of being part of this shire is embedded into this planning document. Through engagement and effective communication, we aim to build a stronger Cardinia for all. Finally, we value and recognise our roles as leaders in this community. As our community's elected representatives, we will be strong advocates to the Australian and Victorian governments and will continue to lobby for action on important local issues. The future for Cardinia Shire is about creating a quality of life with great expectations for fulfilment and economic stability for our families and future generations. The plan presented tonight is for the benefit of all our communities to ensure Cardinia Shire is healthy, safe and connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Bret. Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just ask the mover permission to amend a 2B? Councillor Wilmot and councillors are just asking for your permission to do this, which is 2B, addition of an action under activity 1.5.2 for 2018/2019 to continue to investigate an appropriate location for a permanent home for the Country and District Motorcycle Club. So I just want to insert also the Pakenham Auto Club in that. With your permission.
So you're just including that, you're not changing any of the other wording?
No, just that. And after the Country and District Motorcycle Club and the Pakenham Auto Club.
That's fine, I'm happy with that amendment.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot, and I ask councillors to support that. That's just an addition. Obviously, we're aware of our 2 local motorsports clubs that we would like a permanent home for, so that covers that off. I just want to speak to the amendments. This was advertised at our, obviously, amongst our community at the council meeting and a special council meeting on Monday, the 26th of March. It was resolved to release the draft council plan and the associated documents. We received no public comments in relation to that, but I understand councillors have been speaking to officers, and that's why we see some of the changes in this document. This document now reflects the actual playground upgrades that council intends to do in the forthcoming years. So that's outlined in that table. And also we've got the additional B and C items, which is the auto clubs, and also the addition item of action under activity 4.1.5 for each of the council plan to advocate to state government regarding the development of a suitable site within Cardinia Shire for an airport. That previously wasn't in the council plan action specifically, and it's good to really highlight that as a priority of this council along with the auto clubs. As Councillor Wilmot did say, it's a very important document. It's a great snapshot of what council is doing over the coming years and forecasted proposed actions in other years ahead of us. So I encourage residents to have a look at it. It's great that we're going to have a dashboard on our website that will have real-time updates in relation to these action plans. Can I ask a question to the General Manager of Corporate Services, Mr. Derek Madden? How often do staff add to that dashboard? Is there triggers in relation to when they have to add to that dashboard?
The council plan component of it is updated on a quarterly basis, but the remainder of the data is actually fed live from our systems, so it'll actually feed through overnight. So every 24 hours it'll be updated, the remainder of the data, but the commentary will be updated by the officers on a quarterly basis for the report.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Just checking with Mr. Evans, you've noted that amendment and wording that. Fantastic. Thank you. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Michael Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to endorse this council plan as well. One of the great things about local government, and one of the reasons why I like being a councillor so much, is we don't necessarily have the multi-million dollar options of saying we're going to build a new hospital, we're going to build 150 new schools across Victoria. We don't do that. But what we do fundamentally is work at a grassroots level to keep our community healthy and safe. And if we don't do our job as a local government to keep our community safe and well connected, these massive infrastructure projects mean very little, because you don't have a healthy population who will actually be able to utilise it. And some of these efforts are highlighted in the plan, particularly under the section of our people in our community. Our people focuses a lot on the grassroots effort to engage the community and make sure essential services are available. When you go down to the street to a community health clinic, it didn't just appear. Council have done a lot of work in the background to negotiate these services to come into our shire to service the needs of the community. This council plan speaks a lot about bridging service gaps within our community. We understand the health needs, we understand the diversity, and this council plan is really about the actions to bring our community together at that grassroots level. Another aspect of this plan, which every year I think I've spoken about around our community, is looking at diversity. This is one of our biggest strengths as a community, but as the fabric of our community changes, we do have to adapt to these changing needs. So from time to time, council plans, we do make amendments along the way, because when you have, the data changes quarterly, but when you have from 4, 5, I think one quarter we even had 6 families a day moving into Cardinia, that's a rapid change in our population. So always being responsive to the needs and the latest data trends is important. And one example within that plan is around affordable housing. for residents. 15, 20 years ago, that probably wouldn't have been a feature on one of our council agendas. I wasn't attending council meetings then. But this is something now it really plays a part. Another thing which wouldn't have happened years ago is the massive focus on the environment and the 30% decrease in community emissions that we want to see by 2024, as well as carbon neutrality in our council's own facilities. And the council plan really highlights all of these actions and how we're going to reach them over the coming years. So this is a document that I think if people aren't going to read any document, well, I do love the livability plan, but if the community are going to read one document to inform themselves on the local community and what's happening, I highly recommend the council plan followed by the livability plan, I have to say. So that was all for tonight, but I'll be supporting this plan tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I will move back to the mover, Councillor Wilmot. To sum up, thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, and thank you, councillors, for your comments. And I agree, it's a hard choice between the livability plan and the council plan. They're both great documents. I'd also like to thank the senior leadership team, managers and all the staff involved in the development of the council plan, the action plan and the strategic resource plan for the work that they've put into this over the last probably 6 to 8 months, and they've briefed council on numerous occasions on different things, got our feedback and worked ways of getting what we want as councillors into this plan as well. And I thank them for their time and their patience in doing all of that. As part of the statutory requirements under the Local Government Act, the council plan was put to the public following the special council meeting held on March the 26th. Members of the public had the opportunity to make submissions, and as Councillor Owen said before, we didn't receive any submissions that were directly related to the council plan. The amendments that have been listed are a result of that ongoing internal review process and council staff listening to councillors. So tonight I ask that councillors support the recommendation to adopt the draft council plan and the council action plans and the strategic resource plan that are attached. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item number 12, adoption of budget 2018-2019, withdrawn by Councillor Bret Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I propose the following motion. As per the officer's recommendations, subject to the following changes to recommendations 6 and 7 and to the budget document to reduce the rates and the dollar amounts to be set for each differential rate following receipt of the final valuation data. I refer you to the table. Also, recommendation 7 refers to the rate in the dollar for cultural and recreational land, and this amount needs to be reduced to 0.002048 cents in the dollar. I move so.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Michael Schilling. Back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Schilling. First of all, can I ask a question to the General Manager of Corporate Services, Mr. Derek Madden, in relation to, obviously I've got an alternate motion. Why is that needed? Can you just update Council why that is so?
Yes, so basically what happened this year was the valuations on some of the properties were late coming in. So in effect what happened was the valuations of the property within the Shire, it doesn't actually impact the actual dollars that are actually collected. It's basically just the rate in the dollar, which is just a mathematical formula that the provisional figures we were given moved quite significantly, and the rate in the dollar table now reflects those changes.
Thank you, Mr. Madden, for clarifying that. I just would like to start by thanking all of the residents that have made submissions to the previous the draft budget that was out on exhibition. The papers presented tonight outline the submissions received as part of the budget process and a brief response from Council. A more detailed response will be provided to each of the individual submitters in the coming days. A large number of these submissions commented on the road infrastructure within the Shire and this was in line with submissions received as part of earlier budgets. And it's fair to say some of those submissions, raised serious concern about our roads. Also, recently, I and other Rangers Ward councillors attended a forum in Cockatoo of residents expressing concern about roads. I'm delighted to say that they're as a council delivering its second budget. So this term of council, this is our second budget. I'm glad to say that we have listened and acted for the 2018-19 budget. This council will be investing an additional $20 million in sealing some of our more heavily utilised roads. Details of this program will be forthcoming over the coming months when we finalise that program, but we are going to spend additional $20 million on our road network. This is a significant investment for council and brings road funding included as part of the 2018-19 budget to $24.93 million, compared with $4.9 million in last year's budget. Another major item council has received feedback in the past is our recreation, leisure and community facilities. As part of the 2018-19 council budget, we have responded to this request and acted. As a result, we have allocated over $18 million to this area within this budget. When both of these areas of the budget are combined, they account for 75% of the proposed capital works program. This is a significant investment for the community and shows council are listening to what the community says. I just want to promote some of the real capital works programs. And in the papers, we've got a supplementary paper that talks about the additional supplementary capital works program as part of this budget. And this is really good. Cardinia Community Nursery and Education Hub, that's attached to the Deep Creek Reserve, and the Cardinia Environment Coalition has been advocating to council and other funding bodies for that nursery. So it's great to see that will get up. Kirirup Tennis Facility, $380,000. Tumut Reserve South Oval Pavilion upgrade. Great investment, much needed for our Pakenham residents. That pavilion is not up to standard in relation to unisex female participants. Probably, if not our major recreation reserve in relation to sheer numbers and population, that is going to get an investment, which is fantastic. Jambrook Playground and Skate Park, $450,000. Amazing. We know that there's been issues up there, but we've been able to fund that major community facility, particularly for our young people. Library upgrades. We see the Bunyip Auditorium, second basketball court, $700,000 over first year of 2 years of funding. Alma Trelaw Skate Park, $350,000. The Lions Den upgrade, which will be a facility for at-risk youth, particularly around education. Warrell Reserve, $1.4 million. We know we've talked about Warrell Reserve tonight, and definitely that facility is unacceptable for our community. And to invest that amount of money will be great for that community. Once again, unisex facilities, something that is lacking for people of all genders in participating in sport in Emerald. Also, we've got a budget allocation in relation to unisex upgrades in some of our oldest pavilions. I know Percy Allison in Beaconsfield is one of those reserves that was built in 1982. Will finally get appropriate unisex facilities for all participants, whether you're in Auskick, whether you're a footballer, cricketer, of all genders. I'm really proud of that upgrade and Council's commitment to continue to upgrade our facilities for all participants. That's just a supplementary list. I'll just go through some of the other items that was in the original budget. Coralline Reserve, Pavilion Design Construct, 950,000. Cochrane Park, 385,000. Further implementation of the Pepe's Land Strategy, 200,000. Lang Lang, we've spoke about Lang Lang a lot tonight, and I'm proud to be part of a council that is committing serious dollars for much needed facilities in Lang Lang. We're going to provide additional money for the netball pavilion courts at Emerald to finish off that project. Design and construct of the Bunyip soccer facility, $1.8 million. Fantastic, long awaited. Sorry, councillors, it's just I think we need to promote the infrastructure that will be proposed as part of this budget, if that's all right, Mr. Mayor.
Owen, can you highlight something in Central Ward for
Sorry.
us, please?
Oh, we did talk about Tumark Reserve. Yep.
Thank you.
Gembrook Reserve, we talked about that as well. $1 million towards that project. That was also probably built in the 1980s. So we look forward to that coming off. But as I said, focused on, this budget is about roads, our intended investment of $20 million additional money to work towards addressing our road network. And we know councillors continue to get emails, correspondence from residents, and we need to do something in that space. I'm pleased that we can do that. So I welcome your comments, councillors, about this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bret Owen. We'll go to seconder. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen, too, for that rundown of some of those key budget expenditure. I'm very happy to talk a little bit about Central Ward, Mayor. There are some exciting new projects which have been budgeted for Pakenham Central Ward. One of those being James Bath Reserve, which is just over the railway line, Cardinia Road. That's just over $2 million, and Councillor Ryan, myself, and Mayor Colin Ross have attended that site now on 2 occasions. So it's great to see that contrast of just a few months. So that facility, first stage, is well and truly underway, and this budget should finish that off, which is great. We have the Cardinia Cultural Centre upgrade as well, which is a fantastic piece of infrastructure as well. For the first time, residents in the Cardinia Shire will actually have a place where they can display their artwork in a designated gallery. This hasn't happened yet, so this is the first, and something that we should definitely be celebrating. Another project on the supplementary budget list, there's been a lot of talk in recent years about the Lions Den. There's been a lot of community groups, I know, and a lot of interest in people wanting to use that facility. I'm very excited that there's been $300,000 allocated to turn the old Lions Den into an alternate education facility for at-risk youth. Now, $300,000 in a council budget does seem a lot, but when you look at disengagement in the community and you see that on the average inmate in Victoria, we spend $110,000 a year, it doesn't take much to actually make your money back when you invest in social capital. Although it is a frustrating thing that social capital isn't measured as an economic factor, but still it's something that it's a small investment which goes a long way. There's been a lot in the media about waste and recycling as well. We know now that China is no longer purchasing our plastics, and there have been some councils who have ended up dumping their recycling into landfill. In this budget, we have spoken about the waste charge, which will only be increased by $48 per year on your average, on the rates notice, which is a complete contrast to what a lot of other councils have had to do across the country. Remembering that we used to actually make money from our recycling in Cardinia, and now will come as a cost. But what we have done to try and compensate this, because I know with a household budget, every dollar counts, we've been able to reduce our green waste charge down from $132 a year to $117 a year. So that does reduce that by $15 to try and compensate that a little bit. Another exciting project, which isn't in Central Ward, which Councillor Moore is very excited to say, is the Deep Creek Reserve project. but I'd like to say our growing population in Central and Rangers Board will definitely benefit from this Access All Abilities playground. As somebody that's worked in the community with people with special needs before, will know one of the first things you have to do when you work in the Cardinia Shire is leave the Cardinia Shire, because there's a lack of things to do and accessible places to go. So this will be
Councillor Schilling, it used to be in Central Ward once upon a time. So did this building used to be in Central Ward once upon a time.
Well, maybe when we redistribute the boundaries again, we can put a submission in to realign Deep Creek to Central Ward so we can claim it as our own. Happy to write that submission up. Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. So look, this will be a great project going ahead. So I support this budget. I think it's a fair budget that does balance the needs of increased infrastructure in the community with our need to be financially responsible in the rate capping environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Jess Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Owen for moving this motion. I would like to just quickly reiterate the words of my esteemed colleague over here and say how thrilled I am that we found this additional $20 million to invest in our road network, our unsealed road network, and it's by a vast amount. It's the largest amount of complaints that I hear from residents is to do with our unsealed road network, and we will put on this council to try and deliver to our residents, the best outcomes possible. So I thank the officers involved and the CEO for putting this forward also, because we all recognise as a group that we need to do as much as we can in this sphere. So I look forward to the great outcomes we can achieve with this next year, and thank you all for putting this together.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Do I have any other speakers, either for or against? Councillor Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
I'd just like to say I'm in full support of the budget. I only had one question, and that's the upgrade of the Culture Centre. Is that going to include the green room? Can anyone answer that?
We'll direct that to one of the general managers. Cluna, if you could answer that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Through the Mayor, yes, it will. Whilst the Cultural Centre redevelopment specifically doesn't include the green room, there are already plans underway to make sure that it is revamped with some new furniture and paint and a new kitchenette that will be relocated from one of the other rooms that are in the centre already. So the answer, in short, is yes, Councillor Ryan.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. It's mainly because I went to a show and I was invited back to the green room, and the discussion was about how bad it is, and we've got artists coming from interstate and Melbourne, and this particular company had been here 3 years ago and said it hadn't changed. And the fact that it didn't have a sink or a microwave or a jug for them to have something to eat. So that was the question, and that's why I've brought it up tonight. So thank you very much for following through with that and giving me back the information, and for the residents as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do I have any other speakers, either for or against the budget? Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have one question, and it's regarding plant and equipment. What plant are we replacing?
You can answer this. We'll try and find a general manager. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to take that question, because I'll have to take it on notice and provide council with a full detail of. There is a schedule that goes with it, but I just don't have it with me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have any other speakers, either for or against the budget? If not, I will speak to the budget. I must say, councillors spoke about their favourite section, the plan or the livability plan. I must be really boring, because I actually find the budget the most interesting part of council. So I must be really boring. Derek wouldn't find that boring either, as a general manager of corporate services and finance. I must say, I actually find it the most interesting part of our what we do, because basically we take in ratepayers' money and we're custodians of their money to make sure it goes further and tries to meet the needs of the community. So I find it really important because it really does determine the livelihoods of our residents, whether or not they can sustainably live in the Shire. And I must say, one thing I'm really proud of with this budget, and I'll go through in some detail in a moment, is the fact that it's near a record low of rate increase at 2.25, and we have a record amount of infrastructure spent and still run a surplus. So I'm really proud of that. I think our staff do an amazing job to try and meet the needs of the community, and the council does a great job in trying to, you know, speak on behalf of the community to get their needs met. I will say one thing about speaking about the rangers and councillors, rangers and Port Ward councillors. I must say they do get hammered on roads. They really, really do get hammered when it comes to roads. I must say they always share with us about the roads, and I must say this $20 million investment, I really do sincerely hope it's going to boost the resources that council has to try and meet the needs of some of those residents on those roads. Also, too, I'd like to echo my fellow councillors in saying I would like to thank all the residents who made a submission to the annual budget. The papers presented tonight will outline the submissions received as part of the budget process and provides a brief response from council. A more detailed response will be provided to each of the individual submitters in the coming days. All of these submission highlight the continued pressures of delivering a financially sustainable budget for Cardinia Shire. As an elected councillor, I've always worked to ensure the lowest rate increases possible for our residents, and I'm delighted to say that the budget presented tonight has a rate increase of the proposed 2.25% in line with the state government guidelines, while delivering significant community investment of $60 million in community infrastructure works. Cardinia Shire Council is one of Australia's fastest growing shires, with up to 40 new families a week moving in our municipality. Generally, employee costs are one of the largest costs of any service provider, and it is important to note that Cardinia Shire Council remains one of the lowest in the sector. Read the quote that was in the Herald Sun article, If Desired, where it quoted that. Employee costs are not only the only area of focus for council, and continued efficiencies in contract management and other sources of expenditure have generated savings in excess of $6 million over the last 7 years to council. I'd like to thank the councillor staff who went through all their budgets to try and make that happen, and Derek Madden who orchestrated that on behalf of the councillors and the council. This drive to continually improve our financial sustainability has allowed council to remove the large underlying deficit of over $7 million and puts us in a strong position to respond to the challenges of a growing council and a lower rate environment. As mentioned, this council has built upon the work of previous councils by continuing to focus on cost control with the budget presented this evening. Unfortunately, we're not able to incorporate all the submissions received into the 2018-2019 budget, but we're working with officers to find solutions where possible. The budget as contained in this document has many highlights, and it will take a few minutes to touch on some of these. For the 2018-19 budget, Council has continued to invest significant resources into community infrastructure and the Capital Works program over $60 million, due to the additional $5 million state government funds received as part of the Growing Suburbs Fund. This compares to $44.86 million for the 2017-18 and is the largest in the Council's history. Over the next 4 years, Council will invest more than $140 million in community infrastructure, including more than $86 million to renew and upgrading existing assets throughout the Shire. Some of the key areas of this renewal and upgrade program include $48.82 million on our roads, $7.09 million to deliver footpaths and cycleways, $7.19 million to ensure our parks and open space continue to meet the needs of our growing community. As one of the fastest growing shires in Australia, Cardinia Shire also needs to continue to provide significant new infrastructure to meet the needs of our growing community. Some of the significant programs over this 4-year capital works program include: Council has also allocated $2.8 million for the community grants program to work in partnership with our groups within the Shire to deliver community benefits. I'd like now to spend a few moments discussing Council's operating costs. As earlier mentioned, Council's operating base is one of the lowest in the sector. The ability of Council to continue to meet the needs of the community can be challenged by the influences outside Council's control, which we cannot include cost shifting from various other levels of government to local government. There have been many examples of cost shifting over the years, whether it be library services, maternal and health services, community-based social services, and of course the maintenance costs that Council incurs on assets that we do not own. Also to the crossing supervisors, that was a state government funded program, initially by a whole lot more money when it first began, which has been reduced and reduced. It has been upped a little bit lately, but nowhere near to the amount that it was originally when it was invested into. While identifying works on the ground are important and costs are very vital in any part of our budget, the 2018-19 budget continues Cardinia's focus on some of the much broader issues facing our community. These include environment. Council will continue to deliver a wide range of programs and projects to protect and enhance our natural environment for present and future generations. These include the Aspirational Energy Transition Plan, where Council has set the aspirational target of achieving zero net emissions for the operations and a 36% reduction in community emissions on a per capita basis by 2024. These changes not only benefit the environment, but they will also provide a significant financial saving to Council and to the community on energy costs. Some major actions within this program include environmental upgrades of Council facilities and assets to improve energy efficiency, the incorporation of a sustainable design assessment into the planning approval process to improve the design of our new developments in the Shire, initiatives to support solar electrical systems for our community, and the community Indigenous plant giveaways. This budget also continues Council's ongoing focus on social and community programs. Council is committed to working in partnership with a range of community organisations and the government agencies to deliver a variety of innovative approaches to support our community, including the continued implementation of the family violence projects within the Shire at a local, regional, state government level, including the Together We Can initiative, family violence regional strategy, and our White Ribbon accreditation. Ongoing area partnerships to ensure that children and young people in vulnerable situations are kept safe, and the strategies are developed for the young people disengaged from education, training, work are developed. Support for neighbourhood houses and U3As to deliver a range of training opportunities at a local level through annual funding and advice on community needs and identifying gaps. Overall, while understanding that we have not been able to incorporate the wishes of every community member in our budget, but we are proud of the present budget for 2018-2019. It is a financially responsible budget which reflects the changing environment that the local government are being forced to operate under. I must say again, I think it is a really, really responsible budget. I think this council can be really proud of it. The fact that they can produce a budget which has a record low increase, the record high infrastructure spend, and yet still run a surplus. I commit this budget to all of the council, and I will ask if there's any other speakers who would like to speak to the budget. If not, I will go back to the mover to sum up. Hope he doesn't try and sum up what I just said.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You covered it really well. I just want to provide further information in relation to the waste charge. Councillor Schilling briefly spoke on it, but I would like to talk a little bit more about the impact of, I suppose, the current climate that we're in relation to garbage and recycling. So it has been well reported that the curbside recycling industry is facing a number of challenges in its operations locally and internationally, led in part by the changes to requirements for recyclables by China. China's National Sword Policy has outlined increased standards in the quality and contamination levels that will be accepted by China. This has been impacted on the main end market for much of Victoria's recycled material, creating much uncertainty and reduced commodity prices. Most Victorian council contracts pay councils an amount per tonne, whereas in other parts of Australia, council still pays to have recycling sorted. Due to the issues mentioned previously, this will not be the case, and council will be incurring additional costs for the recycling of its waste. This has impacted council's waste charge and unfortunately has had to pass this on to each and every resident. The impact of this has been somewhat reduced as council has reduced the green waste charge due to efficiencies in this area. Council will continue to work with its waste contractors to deliver a cost-effective service and ensure Cardinia recyclables waste is not diverted to landfill. So I just wanted to provide that further information. Just in summary, the budget documents provide a view into the future sustainability of Cardinia. The financial sustainability of council is built around a number of the documents in the report, which is the annual budget, the 5-year financial plan and the 5-year capital works program. Each of these documents is updated as part of the proposed budget put before councillors this evening. As councillors, we are continuing to work to ensure Cardinia continues to be a sustainable council. The focus on cost control introduced over the last number of years has provided council with a basis for delivering improved results, which has allowed for significant investment in community infrastructure and projects. As noted recently in the Herald Sun, Cardinia Shire Council has one of the lowest cost bases in employee salaries. Council does not stop here, and we are continuing to work with officers of council to deliver value and find efficiencies where possible. Cardinia Shire Council continues to be one of Australia's fastest growing municipalities, and this is a real challenge, with up to 40 new families moving into our council, our shire, each week. This brings with it many challenges and opportunities for council, but the provision of adequate infrastructure and services for the residents of Cardinia Shire continues to drive the budgeting process from councillors. And I just, as a councillor that represents some rural areas of our shire, there is often concern raised about, the apparent money being poured into the growth corridor. Yes, there is a lot of money being poured into the growth corridor, but I think this budget demonstrates the investment in our rural areas, our non-urban growth corridor towns, whether it's community infrastructure, whether it's services. Please, I think residents need to understand the growth corridor infrastructure is funded by partly by developer contributions, other government grants, whereas the rural spend, other than some other government funds, is funded by the ratepayer. And I think I encourage residents to have a look at this budget and how well spread, whether it's the 20 millions on roads or the community infrastructure, our rural communities are not forgotten. And I encourage residents to have a look at it because this is a whole of council budget. Thank you, councillors, and I encourage you to support this budget. And finally, I just want to thank the officers. We have worked very hard as a group of councillors and staff on this budget. This started back in November, and we carry this huge amounts of paper around with us every council meeting type thing, you know, because we feel passionately about these projects, and it has been a real team effort. So thank you, councillors, thank you, officers, thank you. And thank you to the community who fed back into this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared carried. That concludes the discussion of items withdrawn. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the recommendations for the balance of the items listed? Councillor Graham Moore, seconded. Councillor Carol Ryan. All those in favour? Declared carried. Moving on to item number 7, reports or minutes of committees. I note that several reports from various committees have been tabled in addition to the minutes of recent council briefing sessions, and these are available if any councillors wish to view them. Councillors, do I have any reports you would like to report on? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Just one very, very quick report on, just wanted to provide an update on the process that we've been going through over the last few weeks, advertising for people for the Tourism Advisory Board. Applications closed today, and it's very pleasing to say that we've had 22 applications for the 9 positions. So that's a really good result. So yeah, it'll be an interesting process now going through those and interviewing people and selecting the 9 new members. And I look forward to working with them in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other councillors who have any reports? Councillor reports? Councillor Bret Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
I just wanted to advise council back on the 21st of April. I think we're in the right agenda item, I hope. It's a long night. I attended the Puff and Billy Toy Library, their new home attached to St Mark's in Emerald. What an amazing group of volunteers and the service they provide to the Hills community. So well done. It was a pleasure to represent the Mayor and Council at that opening. Anzac ceremonies. We, as councillors, we attended a number of services around our Shire. Personally, I went to Beaconsfield, Officer and Emerald services across a few days. Yakaboo, what a great festival that was, and I'm sure other councillors will talk about that. And the Cardinia Heritage Group had a fantastic afternoon or day promoting 150 years of our local history, Cardinia history. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other speakers with any reports? Councillor Carol Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Just to back Councillor Owen up in reference to the History Fair, I'm part of that group, and you know, it was a great successful day, and we had a lot of people come up and say, when's the next one going to happen? We pretty much said in another 150 years. So we, and Yakaboo, yes, Mr. Yakaboo's friend sitting beside me did very, very well, full marks. You know, you make the day, Graham. And I think it's absolutely wonderful that you spend your time with the community in this special event. I was lucky enough to judge the talent quest. We had some very interesting people on that day, and a lot of them were youth, and to see some of the up-and-coming talent, I really appreciate seeing that, and I'm looking forward to the Battle of the Bands coming up, so which I think Councillor Moore and myself are judges on that one, so that'll be really fantastic too. And that's all I've got to report at this stage, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do I have any other speakers with reports? If not, we will move on to our last remaining item for this evening, which is councillor question time. I believe petitions. Sorry about that. Gone over petitions. Councillors, do we have any petitions to table? We do.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry,
I've got
Councillor.
one.
Bret Owen, fantastic.
So, Mayor, I've got a petition on behalf of Beaconsfield, Railway Avenue residents in Beaconsfield in relation to the impact of railway station car parking severely impacting their residents. So can I table that petition? Thank you.
Absolutely, if you'd like to table that. Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other petitions? Councillor Graham Moore. Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to make comment that the Doran Road residents who came and presented here to the budget, their petition is in with our with Mr Doug Evans. Thanks, Doug. Thank you. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other petitions? If not, we will move on to now the last remaining item, which is councillor question time. And I believe, Mr Evans, we have one question here from Councillor Bret Owen, which he wishes to ask the CEO. Thank you, Mr McQuillan.
Mayor, can I read out the question, please?
No, most definitely you can.
Thank you. The question is to the CEO. Officer Recreation Reserve is planning to build a community space social rooms for all the sporting clubs at the reserve and to cater for the wider officer community. This community space is detailed in the Officer Recreation Reserve Master Plan adopted by Council, I think, in 2005. Council has committed $150,000 towards the project. The project is currently approximately $400,000 short of reaching the funds needed to commence the project. My questions are, how does Council's $150,000 contribution compare to other recent Council financial contributions for similar community spaces, social spaces, and other recreation reserve projects across our Shire? And two, what else can Council do to assist the Officer Recreation Reserve to obtain the sufficient funds required to proceed with this much needed project?
Thanks, Councillor Owen. First of all, I'd like to say that the Officer Rector Reserve Master Plan was updated by Council on the 19th of March 2012, and that's how I respond based on that updated master plan. This is a separate, this is quite different to other facilities we have provided recently. This will be a standalone social space. There was already a pavilion the pavilion has already been built, so it will be a purely a social standing community space. The other facilities that we have provided social space, on the first floor is at Home Park Road, where that was a privately funded, and at Chandler Reserve, where the reserve received $500,000 as election promise from the last election, and there was $250,000 from donors. Within our budget, we would have allowed an amount for 90 square metres, which is the usual amount of space, social space we allow in a single standalone facility. So the $150,000 that we have allocated, not being sure how this will be developed, whether the club or the club will develop themselves. If they are the builders, they will receive the $150,000 from council. If we are the builders, contracting builders, we'll incorporate that $150,000 in the overall budget cost. So for the Officer Recreation Reserve to proceed with this, they need external funding, like Home Park, like Chandler, and like hopefully Jimbrook have done, and similar to Langley.
Thank you, Mr McQuillan.
Well, first of all,
Councillor Owen, yep.
Mayor, part of my question was, which is part two, What else can council do to assist with the Office of Recreation Reserve to obtain the sufficient funds required to proceed with this much needed project? They do have $500,000 from federal government, which is at risk if this project doesn't proceed. It was a 2016 election promise from the federal government. So there is external funding, so we could lose that if this project does not get up. And can I note that even in the 2012 updated document of the Office Recreation Reserve Master Plan, it does talk about such a building being used for the wider community of Officer, not just social space. So I want clarification why our council is not going to provide additional funds. And what else can we do? Can we make this an election commitment? I know the clubs have been dealing with both parties in the lead up to the next state election, but they need support from council to say this is a priority. So can you assist me? What else can council do to get this much needed project that was earmarked in 2005, updated in 2012 for a general community facility? At the moment, we have the old social space that was built in the early 80s for this rec reserve, which has no disability toilets, totally unacceptable. What are we going to do in this space to support the Officer Rec Reserve get this community facility up?
Well, thanks, Councillor Owen. Well, the 2012 Master Plan makes it clear that the pavilion will be designed in accordance with the Recreation Reserve Facility Standards Policy, which is some debate over whether that's been done, but the pavilion has been constructed with the ability for expansion, and it's quite clear in that strategy that's at the cost of user groups to incorporate a large flexible function space that could be available to community and club functions and events. So it makes it clear that that space, if they want to expand it, would be at the cost of the user group, or as we would know today, some external funding. That strategy also made it clear that the existing club room, which is to be retained as the main social base for the Rock Football Club, cricket and netball clubs, and the place to locate honour boards and trophies. So since 2012, it's been clear where the responsibility lies. There wants to be a larger social space over and above what we provide that would be at the cost of the user group or other parties. Now, the cost that we've seen is around about the estimated cost is about $1.2 million. There is funding for, there's about a $380,000 shortfall. So either the club's got to shrink what they want to do to meet the funding arrangements that are currently in place, or receive external funding.
Labour this point, but the question is, what can council do to support them? Can we advocate on their behalf to get this external funding before the project falls over and loses funding money?
It's in our state election and federal election advocacy pack.
Well, yeah, I understand it's not a priority. It is in our pack of about 50 wish lists, but the club has asked for this to be a priority of council.
Well, the council sat down when we were doing the election and state election and federal election pack. Council determined its priorities that we should be strongly advocating for, and unfortunately this was not one of them.
Thank you, Ms Smith.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Thank you, Mr McQuillan. That concludes tonight's proceedings. Thank you for your attendance and our audience over the internet. I hope you found the proceedings interesting, and I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you all.